Where is the sound? Thank you for pointing that out. That is because I forgot to turn my microphone on. Haha, professional live streamer here. So here we go. Let's start that over again. Yeah, I'm getting all the no sounds. You guys are about 15 seconds behind me. We good to go now? Yeah. First time doing it, huh? Yeah, okay. I'm waiting for the chat to verify that there is sound before I continue. Because again, you guys are like 15. There you go. Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm a noob. It's fine. It's all right. Let's start that over then. So what I was talking about, well, first of all, thanks for joining me. Thanks for, showing up, all that pleasantries, all that stuff. What I was talking about was a podcast that I'm doing. Now, a lot of you have asked if I do these podcasts for the live stream because this would be great in podcast form. Swift News would also be well in podcast form, along with some other interviews and stuff I have planned. So I do want to let you guys know I am doing a podcast shortly. I am working on 2 other projects, content creation projects for you guys. So this podcast will be like a third thing. And yeah, so that's coming soon. It'll just probably start off with me uploading my live streams in Swift News there, and then eventually I'll weave in some interviews and some actual like podcast type episodes. So that is coming soon. Wanted to talk about that before I dove into the questions. Got a little hiccup there with me forgetting to turn on my mic. So before we dive into the questions, let's go ahead and say what's up to the chat. Cringe Z was first. What's going on, Cringe? Tekken 5, what's going on? Looks like you have to catch the replay. Looks like you got to take off. Zach, good to see you. Christoph, Sonkit finally made it to a live stream. It's been a while. Polish, good to see you. Philip, what's going on? Jason, good to see you again. And okay, now this is what's going on from Japan. Julio, all the way from Japan. Robert, what's going on? Aiden. All right, so now this is where my sound wasn't on and everybody's letting me know. So, okay, let me just check the chat to make sure everything's good to go before I dive into the questions, because the way my live streams work is I have 6 Twitter questions that I'm going to answer, and then I will answer your live questions. So if you have a question you really want to answer, maybe you got to go and you want to answer it, put your answer at the top, go ahead and super chat, or if you just want to support the channel, super chats are always appreciated, but that is a way to get your question bumped to the top of the list to answer. So let me dive into the Twitter questions here to get a start. First one comes from KD Apps. What is the best way to build your universal app? With code, storyboard, or both? Is this a real question? I half think it's a troll, half think it's a real question. I'm not going to answer it, obviously. I just did a video this week. The reason I wanted to actually share this question and include this is because I wanted to actually thank you guys or anybody that commented on that video, because I was really worried when I posted that video that the comment section would be just a shit show, to be honest with you. But it was actually very, very civil. The discussion in the comments of my storyboard versus code video was great, very civil. If you haven't seen the video or if you haven't read through the comment section, definitely read that. A lot of good insights on the pros and cons of storyboard and code. So I included that question as kind of a joke just to give me an excuse to talk about the comment section and how great it's been and how surprised I was. So thank you everyone for that. That was great. And again, if you haven't checked that out, go do that. So on to the real questions. First up, from Jeff Wilkinson. If you were to develop a production app from the beginning, what backend would you choose and why? AWS, Firebase, etc., all that good stuff. If you did go with being a full stack dev, what would you choose? Something tried and true, or take a risk with something like Vapor? So this question is based on like how do you choose your backend? If you follow my live streams before, you've heard me talk about it. Most of the projects I work on have a custom built backend, so I'm going to be very biased towards that, and I do think that is the best way to go. However, that is going to be the most resource intensive, whether you spend the money to hire somebody else to do it or spend the time to learn backend dev yourself, which is, if you're not a backend developer, that's, iffy. So it is the more expensive way to go, and by expensive, I mean resource intensive. However, in my opinion, that is the best way to go. I have never really used Firebase, but from what I've seen, what I've heard, and I'm happy to be wrong on this, so correct me if I'm wrong, but it doesn't really scale well with pricing. Like, it's great to get a project started, but once you get like a serious amount of users, the pricing starts to really, really hurt. However, the way I look at Firebase is if you do want a backend, it is a good thing to use for like a proof of concept. Let me go ahead and show my pretty face. It's a good thing to use as a proof of concept. So let's say you have this idea for an app and just use Firebase as the backend. Once you prove the concept, you get the MVP working. Now you're like, okay, now I will invest in a serious custom backend. Whereas if you invest in that custom backend from the beginning, you're really, really rolling the dice. But if you use one of the backend as a service to prove the concept, then now you can more confidently invest in a proper backend. That's just the way I look at it. But if I have my choice, I definitely go custom backend every time. Again, if the resources are there. All right, next question. Any suggestions on small iOS dev projects charged at a fixed price that could be used to kickstart a freelance career rather than building complete iOS apps from scratch? So thank you, Sky, for the question. I can only give what happened to me and how I got my start. So I got my start in with a development agency. It was a very, very small app, converting it from Objective-C to Swift. And the appeal of bringing me onto that was that I was a Swift developer. They were, for some reason, struggling to find people that were, competent in Swift. So I found a small project like that. So yeah, conversions, maybe just adding a feature. What I would recommend, Sky, is try to get your foot in the door with a development agency and start off on a very, very small project like you said. That's what kicked off my career, to be honest with you. I started off on that small project. I really impressed them. They liked what I did. They gave me a slightly bigger one. Really impressed them on that one. They gave me a bigger one. And then by the fourth project I was working on, I was building entire apps for them. So that's kind of how I went about it. Now, I do know just because it worked for me doesn't mean it's going to work for everybody. Everybody's, unique there. But yeah, I would try to get in with the development agency. Start small, blow them away, and then you'll hopefully get more and more work. That's what happened with me anyway. Next Twitter question from James. If market for an app idea is big but has been exploited by others for 5+ years, is it worth building that app? In other words, could my future app make as much money as the other apps did in the past? I promised myself I'd make learning my first priority, but I do need to support myself. So this is a pretty common question, right? Every app idea has been done. Maybe not every idea, but the vast majority of them. But if you can come at it doing it better or have your own unique twist on it, I mean, how many to-do apps out there are there? There's a million to-do apps, and there's plenty of them making decent money. If everybody just stopped making to-do apps when the first one was done because they're like, oh, somebody's already done it, I don't think that's the way to go about it. So by all means, if you have an idea and you like it and you have your own unique twist on it, or you genuinely feel you can do it better than the existing apps, that's great. And using those existing apps, you already have kind of like the concept is proven, right? Like I mentioned earlier about proving the concept before you really invest in the app. So I guess the moral of that question is don't let the fact that an app already exists like it stop you from building your own version of it. Again, look at Instagram stories to Snapchat stories, right? They basically ripped it off, but they did it better. And, we all know how that went. Next Twitter question here from Leela says, hi, sir, how to create a framework that can be used in other projects? Could you please explain the details clearly? Exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. So that's a bit much to go into for the live stream, but I wanted to include this question because I recently just built my own framework for my job. There's like a lot of math stuff that goes on, so we decided to put all that math stuff in its framework to be shared amongst. We have like an engineering app and then a consumer app. So anyway, we needed it to be shared across multiple projects. So the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I can't do a tutorial live on the air, obviously, but I do think it is a great exercise to do if you haven't built a framework yet. I learned so much. You can know I know what access control is. I know what file private and private means, but you're really going to get to know it once you try to build your own module that has to integrate with multiple different apps. You're really going to get a crash course in access control. So like I said, while I knew access control, now I feel like I know it 10 times better because I went through the headache of building my framework and making it work across all of our projects. Also, when you're uploading your framework to the App Store, I just had this recently because we just uploaded a test flight for like our first round of beta testing, and there's a whole lot of stuff you have to do with like bitcode, and there's a whole lot of I don't even fully understand it quite yet. I'm still digging into it, but I guess the point of this answer is building a framework. You're going to learn a lot because CocoaPods handles a lot of that for you when you use the third-party frameworks. But when you build your own custom one for your own project, you're going to get a crash course on a lot of stuff. So I would definitely recommend trying that out at least once. I think, is that it for Twitter questions? No, last Twitter question here. When you interviewed with all the big companies, how did you answer the question, why this company? Now, this answer is going to be a very personal one because this is what I was looking for at the time. So when I went to all the big companies, it is because I feel like I had hit a lot of chapters in my career. I had done the small startup. I did the medium-sized startup of like 30 employees. I had done the small startup of like 6 employees. I had done a year and a half of independent contracting, right? So, and I still feel this way. I feel like the main chapter missing from my career is the major company working on a team of whatever, 20, 30, 40, 50 iOS developers working on an app that has millions of users, right? I don't have that chapter in my career yet. And I feel like that's the only chapter missing because I feel like I've done all the other types of iOS development. So that is why when they asked, why do you want to work at these companies? Because I was interviewing at the big companies. That was the main gist of my answer. And I told them that, I want to have my code like actually be used by millions of people and feel like impactful. Not to say that like when working at a small startup or independent contracting that your code isn't meaningful, but the reality of it is you're building it from scratch to launch. So you don't have any customers, right? So if there's a bug, you may have 100 or 1,000 customers that are affected. Like, I don't want to say that's not a big deal, but it's not as big as a deal as something that has, 20 million users or something like a Facebook where there's billions and billions of users. So I was looking specifically for that, chapter in my career. So that's how I answered that question. So I know that doesn't apply to everybody. Everybody's in different stages of their career. But I guess the point of that answer is just be honest about what you're looking for. Like, there's no trick answer. Just be true to yourself. I'm like, this is why I want to work at this company. And that's how you answer that question. So, all right, that does it for the submitted Twitter questions just to get started off. I see we have a bunch of questions coming in, so I'm going to go down through the chat. Again, you can see the list of chat. You can follow along so you know where I'm at on the list. If you got to go and you want your question bumped up, go ahead and super chat that. I'll answer that right away. Or again, it just supports the channel. So let me find where the questions start because I know there's a whole bunch of, hey, dude, turn your mic on, you idiot. So let me get past all that. Okay, scrolling down. Okay, so first one from Alexander says, hi, Sean, how do you track your time when you worked as a freelancer? So there's a app called Time2, Tyme, and then the number 2. You guys can just pop it into your browser right now to Google it. I think it does cost, it was like $15, I think. I didn't mind, so that's actually an interesting topic. When it came to my freelancing career, like that was my business, that was my job. So there is a lot of software that I didn't mind spending money on. So like an invoicing software I purchased time tracking with the Time2. Like there's certain things as a contractor that it's worth spending the money. Like everybody's looking for free software. I get it. But sometimes the paid versions are just a small drop in the bucket when it comes to like the money are well worth buying. So Time2 is what I used. I really like it. It synced from my Mac to my phone effortlessly. It was pretty good. Sean is a very good swimmer. Don't know what that means. Okay. Hi, Sean. Very important question. I'm a fresher and got a job as an iOS developer. The problem is I'm the only dev. It's tricky as a fresher. Out there in company for iOS, of course. I'm quite confident, but getting me some problems on how to deal with such problems. Please answer, please, please, please. So I think what you're trying to say is you are the only developer at this company, and you're a fresher. Like you said, it's early. So this is a tough spot to be in. I always recommend when going to your first job, try to join a team or try to at least have somebody more senior than you. That is going to help you out so much. I'm not saying you can't survive on your own, but your life will be so much easier and you'll learn so much more when you go somewhere with a more senior developer. So Dilip, you are in a little bit of a tough spot. I'm not going to lie. My answer to you is if you are the only developer there is to just really start networking on Twitter, here in my community. Just try to network with as many developers as you can and have people that you can reach out to when you run into a problem. But yeah, you're in a little bit of a tough spot. I feel your pain. But yeah, that's what I would do. I would start building my network and having plenty of people to reach out to answer the questions. Amir Hossein asks, for an iOS developer, which skills beyond iOS skills is needed? Do we need some backend or web development? It certainly helps. Like knowing backend or web development certainly helps, especially because one of the trickier things to learn in iOS development when you're just learning is networking. Downloading stuff, post, get, all that stuff, and what's in a header, what's in the body, how does all that work, authentication type stuff. So knowing all that as like a back-end web developer, that'll give you a head start learning that, core aspect of iOS development. So it certainly helps, but I think your question is it needed? No, it is not needed, but very, very helpful for sure. Patrick hello from Bangladesh. What's going on? Patrick says, any experience with GraphQL? If so, what are your thoughts on it? Patrick, love your avatar, by the way. No, I don't have any experience with GraphQL, so can't give an opinion there. Arun says, which books do you suggest for iOS programming? So definitely, and I have a link in the description. They are affiliate links, but Paul and I, he's been on the show before, good buddies. So definitely check out Hacking with Swift. Again, I have the links in the description of this video. And also, I always recommend RayWenderlich.com. Just go ahead and Google Ray, Wenderlich, and you'll find that. So those are the two I always recommend. Rahul says, really like your videos. Thank you, Rahul. Appreciate that. What are the best online resources to expand the knowledge in iOS development? I kind of already answered that just a little bit ago. More book recommendations. Again, as you see in the chat, try Hacking with Swift, Ray Wenderlich. Check out my links in the description. You'll see that there. Do a tutorial on MVVM and protocol-oriented programming. So MVVM, I do plan on doing tutorials on these topics for sure. I don't have a ton of experience with MVVM. I mostly do MVC. But protocol-oriented programming, I obviously know what it is. I've watched videos on it and tutorials. I haven't built a project using it, so I think I want to try to do that. Kimbo says, Houston will beat the Warriors next season. I don't think anybody has a chance. I don't even claim to be a Warriors fan. Like, of course, living in the Bay Area, I root for them, but I'm just an NBA fan, as you see with all these different team shirts. So when I say no chance, that's not coming as a Warriors fan. That's just coming as a basketball fan. They're just... And barring any major injury, there's no chance they lose. Hi, Sean. One question. My manager is crazy. Okay. He asked me the estimation for a task, which I don't know how to do. Any suggestions? Yeah. So, this happens actually a lot as a developer, especially if you're contracting. A lot of your clients will ask you for time estimates, and maybe you have to build a feature you haven't built before, so you don't really know how long that's going to take. So my recommendation is always give a large window. I'm just going to throw out the numbers. The numbers are meaningless, but let's say okay, that'll be 40 to 60 hours. And the reason I use those numbers is because that gives a pretty wide window, right? Like that's like a plus or minus 20-hour window or 10-hour window if you think it's going to take you 50 hours. So just don't give one number. Make sure you give a window. That's what I always do when I'm not sure, because that buys me some time a little bit. Naman says, I follow the Ray Wenderlich post, haven't invested in their paid video series. So I know money is different for everybody, but the $20 a month, I think is a small price to pay for the amount of content that is on there, the videos. Again, I don't have any affiliate with Ray Wenderlich. If you buy that, I don't get any kickback. So this is a genuine recommendation because it's honestly how I got my start in iOS development, was watching those videos. So it is $20 a month. You don't have to maybe only do it for a month or two. So the total's, $20, $60 total, and you're just going to get a ton of knowledge. I always highly recommend that. So yeah, can't say enough good things about that. Yeah. And Harshit seems to just, recommend what I just says. I paid for the videos. They were awesome. Yeah. You're going to learn so much. DC says, what do you think about Devslopes in regarding to learning? I've never used Devslopes. They have reached out to me before to possibly make a tutorial, but I've used Devslopes for their crypto tutorials, and that was good, but I can't really comment on their Swift stuff because I don't know, by the time I discovered them, I was already kind of well on my career, and I was already kind of ingrained in the Ray Wenderlich ecosystem and in the Hacking with Swift ecosystem, and that solved all my problems. So I never really felt the need to find another one. So not saying they are good or bad, I've just never used them. Sanka says, how to seamlessly handle debug/release modes. It depends on what you're doing. It's a pretty vague question. A lot of people will put a conditional. You can do if, I don't know the exact syntax off the top of my head. I always have to look it up, but it's you can do stuff like if in debug, do this. If in release, do this. You can conditionally separate them. So that's how a lot of people handle it. But again, I don't really the only main thing that I typically toggle between debug and release is the environment. Usually you'll have a staging environment and a production environment when it comes to your database and backend. So typically in my projects, that's the only thing that kind of gets flipped between debug and release mode. So usually it's just a quick, again, if debug, use this API address, if release, use this address kind of thing. So I don't know if you're looking for more than that, Sankit, but that's typically how I handle that. But again, it's not a huge thing in my projects. Mahmoud says, how the 2016 MacBook Pro handle multiple simulators, and how many can it run at the same time? Well, I've never stress tested it to, try to open up 12 of them, but I have opened up 2 at the same time. I'm not sure why you'd need to have so many simulators open at the same time. I think the most I've ever had open is 2 for anything I've ever needed. So maybe you have a special circumstance, but it handles 2 just fine. And again, I've never gone crazy and tried to do 20 or something. How someone is considered a mid-level or senior level iOS developer. Nathaniel, this is always a tricky question because I think everybody's going to have a different answer. I know recently there was a blog post, somebody did try to break it down, and Brian Vong of Let's Build That App did a video on that. So check that out. It's just a very tricky question. A lot of people try to attach years to it, like, oh, if you've been in for 3 years, you're mid-level. If you've been in for 5 or more, you're senior. That's tricky because like everybody learns and advances their career at different speeds. So I know I'm not really giving you an answer, Nathaniel, but it's because it's so tricky. For just how I consider myself right now at the mid-level. Been doing it for a little over 3 years. And again, my experience did a 1.5 years contracting. The rest has been at small startups. I wouldn't consider myself a senior level iOS developer until, like I talked about earlier, I had that chapter where I was working at the major company. Insert, Apple, Facebook, Twitter, whatever. Insert one of those major companies here. And it doesn't even have to be that big. Let me back up on that. I would consider myself senior once I worked on a more mature and established app that had a large user base. That's what I mean. And on a larger team. Like I said, I'm missing that aspect of my career. But once I hit that, I would consider myself senior. Drengen says, hey, would you mind sharing with us some of your future plans? I don't know if that mean my life or this channel. So I'll just go with this channel because that's probably relevant. So where I'm working at right now, we are launching in Q1 of 2019. So I'm definitely doing that job until then because I'm invested. I want to see the product launch. We're building it, launching in Q1 2019. In Q1 of 2019, I'm going to reassess things. One of those options could be YouTube full-time, depending on how things change from now, in the next 7-8 months, anything can happen. So YouTube full-time is an option, and then also going to the bigger company, like I mentioned before, is an option. So we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But as far as like content, I have a ebook coming out. Like I said, working on that podcast with this live streams and Swift News and other episodes. I want to do some courses. And actually, one of these courses I think a lot of people will like is because this is one of the most common questions I get is the whole point of the course that I want to make is going to be like, after you do this, it's going to answer the question, what do I need to know before I start interviewing for a job? Or, what skills do I have to have before I'm ready for my job? Basically, the course is going to answer that question. We'll build an app or 2 that is going to cover all those bases. And if you finish those courses and you understand everything in there, you should be ready, to go out and start interviewing, start applying for jobs. So again, ebooks, courses, podcasts, more content will be coming. It's just not enough time in the day. That's for sure. I have so many ideas I want to do. All right. Do you think AR is something that has big potential or just temporary excitement about it? So right now, temporary excitement, and I've said this many times before, is that, sorry, I got distracted by this next comment here. Do you think AR is something that has big potential or is just temporary excitement about it? It's temporary for now because as long as you have to hold your phone up to look through it, it's not going to take off, I don't think. Once Apple or whoever comes out with AR glasses and then the AR, you just are wearing your glasses or even well into the future, maybe contact lenses, that's when I think it'll really take off. But yeah, as long as you have to hold your phone up. But again, we're still super early. ARKit is a year old. We're still super early in the process, so I'm not judging it right now. I'm super excited about the potential of where it could go. It's just going to take a few years, that's for sure. As a senior iOS developer, what is exactly expected from you? This is going to be different from every company. Like, are you leading a team? So if you're leading a team or managing an iOS team, you may not code as much, right? You may be managing, right? So that's a typical jump engineers take, going from coder to manager. And, as a manager, you may only code, 0, or you may only code 10 to 20% of the time. And the rest is like meetings and typical management stuff. So this really depends on your team. You could be doing, as a senior iOS developer, you could be still coding all the time, and it's your job to decide on like architecture decisions. You're basically making all the technical decisions as a senior, and then obviously implementing maybe the tougher stuff. But again, this is going to vary wildly based on your team. Jordan says, hey, I have a question about dynamic table views. How can I populate them when I need to include a bunch of different categories with unique rows for each? I don't expect a direct answer. Yeah, because I can't do a tutorial here live. So a bunch of different categories with unique rows. So actually, if you follow Swifty McSwiftface on Twitter, he just posted something using enums, whereas basically, like, I'm assuming you say for different situations you have a different type of cell you want to show, and it was a good method to show basically different table view cells on different occasions. So give him a follow, check out what he just posted, and let me know what you think about that. That's just a quick answer I can give right now, without actually going into a whole full-blown tutorial. Hey Greg, what's going on? No worries about being late. You can always catch the replay. What books for Advanced Swift? So again, Water Chiller 14 in my description. There's a book called Advanced Swift. There you go. And there's a link to that in the description. And I do also have the start of a video series called Advanced Swift where I start going through that book. I'm only through the 4th chapter. Slacked off a little bit. Basically, building those videos was very, very time consuming, and with my new job, I can only make quick tutorials now. So I will get back to that series eventually, but it's on hold for now. But yeah, check out Advanced Swift. Link is in the description of this video, Water Chiller. How can I schedule push notification after a year in Firebase? I've never used Firebase, so don't know. But you can do that locally. You can just schedule a local notification based on any time increment. So you would just schedule it 1 year. You can do 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, whatever. Okay. I don't know, this Jay Johnson guy, I don't know what's up there. Ali says, are you going to buy the new MacBook Pro? No, I'm not. I have the 2016, and I obviously just bought the iMac Pro, so we're on a little computer buying break. So my laptop's the 2016 MacBook Pro, so I don't know, maybe 2019, 2020 is when I'll look to upgrade the laptop. So I'm good for now. MSGS 1970 says, I have an app ready to be approved. They rejected me, my app. Metadata rejected, happens all the time, but they didn't give me a clear reason, just a long list. What do you recommend me do? Is the first app I'm trying to publish. So obviously I can't tell without seeing the rejection and what's going on there. And so, sorry, I'm getting distracted by other comments. But yeah, just follow that list. And also Apple reviewers typically are good. If you want to reach out to them via email or the messages and ask for help, let them know this is your first time trying to publish an app. More than likely, they will, help you out and let you know what to do. So I would just ask them directly, to be honest with you. Hey, what's going on, Kilo Loco? Good to see you again. Shivram says, Advanced Swift series is a bit behind. Yes, it is. Thank you. I know. Again, like I said, those are just very, very time consuming to build, and time is pretty, limited right now. Yeah, Coder Storyboard. Thank you. There it is. Somebody has to ask it, right? As you answer my question, so could you please suggest me some Twitter handles that are very helpful with Fresher? I don't have any off the top of my head. Devslopes, if you want to, you can just click on I'm not following that many people. I only follow like 320. So if you click on my profile and click on who I'm following, you can see the whole list. So just go through there, click on each one. A lot of times in their bio, they'll say iOS developer at whatever company, and then just follow who you want to follow. So definitely go ahead and start doing that. It's a good way. Philip, what's going on? Good to see you again. Says, have you tried building an app using functional programming? Thoughts? I haven't built one from scratch. During my contracting year and a half, one of the projects I had to jump in and help out on because one of the devs had like a family emergency. He had to be gone for 2 weeks. Was built in functional programming. I knew nothing about it. I just had to jump in and like build one small little feature. So my thoughts are it was tough to learn just trying to jump in real quick knowing nothing about it. But and talking with the senior developer I was working with, he says, yes, there is a bit of a steep learning curve, but once you learn it, it is actually pretty cool and pretty useful. It's just a steep learning curve. So again, my thoughts are that I haven't dealt with it that much, so I don't have a very intelligent opinion on it. But from what little bit I did touch, I could see how useful it would be. So for a certain project. Kilo Loco getting some love. Good to see. Good to see him back too in the YouTube space. Took a little break. What does Unity or Unreal provide me as an AR developer? I mean, why do I need to use them rather than Xcode directly? So when you're building AR, you need to have your 3D models. And I don't think, I could be wrong on this, don't bash me. I don't think there's a iOS method to build like 3D models for ARKit yet. Could be wrong, but yeah, so that's why, I think SceneKit can, I don't know. I'm just going to say I don't know. Is Katura and Vapor ready for building large-scale REST APIs? I'm so keen to implement them in the next project I've been given. Tatenda, I'm not sure if they're ready yet because I'm not using them. I mean, obviously they're maturing every day, right? They're over a year old now, probably. So it's getting better and better. So I think they're definitely ready for small projects, but are they ready for large-scale APIs? I think if they are, they're just barely there. Or if they're not, they're close, in my opinion. So, yeah, that's the answer there. It's very close either way. Kilo says, Ray Wonderlick for the win, unless you're on mobile, in which case watching videos kind of sucks. Yeah, it's always hard to do any developer tutorial on mobile. Paulitzer from Hacking Swift has tutorials on MVVM. Yep, he has tutorials on pretty much everything. I have one app in the App Store. I think it is useful, but the missing part of that is advertisement. How can I get some investors? I'm from Canada. Well, I've never fundraised for a startup, so can't really answer that question. Sorry. KR Aeon says, I'm working on an e-commerce app and the localization gets really tricky. Localization's hard in any app. Do you have any recommendation of any sort of article or content that might give me some deep insights on this topic? So there are a bunch of like localization tutorials. Again, I believe Ray Wonderlick has one. And then there's a typical Medium article. If I just Google iOS localization, usually this one Medium article pops up towards the top. I can't remember who wrote it or the name of it, so you'll just have to Google that as well. But yeah, localization is hard. Like it's tricky. Monty says, explain size classes. So just briefly, there's like compact and regular, and then there's compact, regular, compact, and that's for like horizontal and vertical. Basically, it's a way for Apple to generalize. So like regular is like an iPad screen. Compact is like an iPhone 5 screen, I believe. And then compact regular is like the long but skinny. So it's just a way for Apple to generalize all their different screen sizes. So you can basically conditionally set certain constraints, whether you're doing Storyboard, based on what size class it is. That's a very high level. It's more tricky than that, obviously. Apex Racer says, CS degree good in 2018. I think a CS degree is always good. I don't think it's required, but it's always good. Of course, it's going to help you having that knowledge. It also depends on where you're at in life. So if you're 17, 18, getting ready to go to college, then yes, I would say absolutely go for it. If you are later in life, like I was, again, I made my coder career change at 32 or 33. I always get mixed up on that. Then I don't think going to a 4-year degree in your early 30s would be worth it. I think just learn Swift or learn whatever language and go for it. But again, if you're of college age, typical college age, then I would absolutely go get it. So really depends on where you're at in life, but it's always good, just not required. Be Free says, I've just checked Apple Developer Academy results and I was 564. 500 people get in. I have to continue to learn on my own. Was this the one that was in Italy, I think? If so, man, that's close. That would have been awesome to go to. Somebody commented on my recent video that they got into that Developer Academy, the one that was like in Italy, like they give you a MacBook, they put you up and everything. And he discovered it through watching Swift News. So I was pretty happy about that. That was pretty cool. How to win a WWC 2019 scholarship? Don't know. Never applied for one. Never got one. I do know there are a lot of people like in my community that follow me that are scholarship winners. So maybe if you can find them and reach out to them, maybe they'll have a better answer. Mahmoud says, what is the best place to learn unit testing? So there's typical tutorials all around the website or internet. Like I said, Ray Wonderlick, Hacking with Swift. But I think the real learning is actually implementing it. So do those tutorials, learn it. And then the real learning is implementing that into your own app, building your own, testing suite. So learn through the tutorials, then do it in real life, and you should be good to go. Let's clone that app. Good name. Hi, Sean. Can you make tutorials to build complete apps? So yes, like I kind of mentioned, you might have came in late. I do plan on doing some courses later. It'll probably be early next year, to be honest with you. Again, answering that question is where we do build a complete app, where you'll be ready to start applying for jobs. Water Chiller says, which monitor do you use? Resolution, ultra wide, only need it for programming. If you only need it for programming, so what I use, I have an iMac Pro, so that's a 5K, 27-inch display, but that's what I use for video editing mostly. That's what I have at home. At work, I have my 34-inch ultra wide, which I highly recommend 30 or even the 38 if you want to go crazy. I'm a believer for programming that more real estate is better. Just having, Stack Overflow articles, 2X code windows, like, it's super nice. Again, just for my workflow, everybody's different, but yeah, I would recommend the ultra wide for if all you need it for is programming. The downside of the ultra wide is, at least I got mine a year ago, the resolution, they don't have 4K, right? So if you do need that 4K or Retina or whatever you want to call it, then the ultra wide might not be for you. But if all you need it for is programming, should be good. Samar, by the way, Samar is the one that won the Academy in Italy. So I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Samar, but I think he won that. So congrats on that. That's awesome. He's the one that heard about it from Swift News, applied, and got in. So cool stuff. But anyway, thoughts on how Marzipan is shaping up. I haven't looked into Marzipan since they talked about it at WWDC. So I haven't really done a deep dive. Can't really say. All right, I got about five to 10 minutes left. So I'm going to start doing some rapid fire questions. So here we go. Thanks for answering my previous question. If you don't use Firebase, well, can I schedule it with Apple push notification? Yeah, I think I did answer that with the local notifications. You can schedule it based on the time. You just revealed you have a wife. Didn't know that. Did I? I don't remember saying anything like that. I don't have a wife, so I don't know what I said which would have revealed I had a wife. But anyway. I sent in my app for publishing, and it came back saying that it doesn't work on IPv6 Wi-Fi network. Any ideas on how I would be able to solve this? No idea. Never gotten that error. Not sure why that would have been the case. As always, good beard, Sean. Thank you. Appreciate it. I got it trimmed about a month ago, so it gave it a little more shape, so it looks much better. Zasheen says, have you tried server-side Swift? I have not yet. I'm waiting for it to get more mature, which it's pretty much getting there. So I think one of my next projects or any project I decide to build on my own, I will probably give it a try. Devslopes says, how to send my app to someone based on their phone UUID without own website. I don't know. I always use TestFlight when I want somebody to test my app. I don't know if you've messed with TestFlight, Devslopes. Give that a try. Or you just build it on their phone. Like if you know them, like they can come to your computer, just build it on their phone, or TestFlight. That's the only way I've really distributed apps. Well, there's another app called Hockey App that I've used before, but I don't know, whatever. Sony says, how can someone get investors to invest in the launch of a completed app? That's a tough question. I think many entrepreneurs here in Silicon Valley would love to know the answer to that question. It's not easy. Josh says, do you have experience in multiple targets from a single Xcode project? Any info in case? Nothing major. Again, we typically have different targets for sometimes, again, it'll be like development, staging, production, kind of different targets. But they're small differences, nothing major difference. Also use other targets for things like, shares actions, or I can't remember, or share extensions, stuff like that. But I don't think that's what you're talking about. Miko says, when are you going to shave your beard? When I can grow hair on top of my head. That's when I'll shave my beard, probably. So never. For how much can I sell my app to corporate or individuals? How can I determine the cost of it? Again, this is going to be very different. How many daily active users, monthly active users, how much revenue is it generating? If it's just, there's so many questions that, I guess that's how can I determine the cost of it? That's you do. Look at any revenue you're looking at, your growth projections, all that kind of stuff. There's so much that goes into that. Is there a chance to get a job as an iOS developer in the USA if I am from Czech Republic? Of course. Yeah, I would, again, start networking on Twitter. Build a great portfolio, a great visual portfolio too. Have your own personal website that has your portfolio in it. Have some great projects up on GitHub so people can check out your code. Yeah, maybe sometimes they might do like a contract to hire where they contract you. You stay in the Czech Republic for a little bit. You do work a contract for 6 months, and then they decide to bring you on full time. I've seen that path happen a lot. So yeah, there's plenty of ways. It's certainly possible. How can we know that our architecture is a good one? I don't know. That's tough. How to break through Plato in developer life. I'm not sure what Plato is. I'm almost not junior, but not senior. All my programming path looks like meaningless marathon. What do you do when things look meaningless for you? I don't know. It's a tough question. I don't think I've ever been in that spot where I felt like things were meaningless. Because early in my career, I started at a startup, and I was one of 2 iOS developers. I was like a main developer on the project. So obviously you felt useful there. Like if I don't do my job, the app doesn't get built, the product doesn't launch. So you definitely felt useful there. And then I went right into contracting to where, again, oftentimes you're the only developer on the project. So of course you feel useful there. So it's hard for me to answer, Dimitri. I don't think I've ever been in that situation. Kaya says, what's the iOS Developer University program? Not sure. Yeah, Samar definitely confirming he was the one that's going to Italy. Jose says, "Hi Sean, please keep putting out the excellent content on. You're super helpful to all of us. Have you ever built a network layer to reuse in all your projects?" No, I mean, I always have a network layer in every project, but really the only thing that gets used is, I mean, nothing gets reused. I use Alamo Fire, so I mean, they all look alike, but obviously like the network calls are different because you're working with a different API and different URLs. But yeah, it's basically the same with different network calls, but it's not really reusable. Yeah, if that makes sense. It was this one, and I found out about it from you. Thanks for that. No problem, Be Free. Sucks you almost made it. You got close. Again, I would have loved to see you get in there because that sounds like an awesome opportunity. All right, just finishing up here, wrapping up. Let's get a couple more good ones. Is Stack Overflow for beginners? Is documentation the best resource to go to? They're both good resources. You're going to find most of your answers on Stack Overflow. Most of your answers that have been answered a million times will be on Stack Overflow, like the very common ones. If you have a more unique question, like maybe you're dealing with a niche framework that not a lot of people deal with, that's when you go to documentation. I mean, well, you could always go to documentation to start, but typically for something I know, like if I have a question and like I know thousands of people have run into this problem, so I know there's probably a good answer, that's Stack Overflow for sure. If it's a more unique situation, then documentation. That's how I roll. Is it a good practice to contribute to open source project? If yes, which project do you recommend? So yeah, I think it's good practice to contribute to open source projects. That being said, I've never done it. I've always been busy enough with my work and my contract work and YouTube. But for sure, I think it's a great thing to do. But I don't have a project to recommend because, like I said, I've never done it. Semper Phoenix or Jason says, with your ultra-wide monitor or iMac Pro, do you use multiple desktops with apps maximized or split screen? Or do you keep everything on one big screen? So I keep everything on one big screen, small windows. I don't use like a window manager, which I know everybody yells at me when they see my tutorials and they see me like manually resizing my screens. But yeah, I just manually resize my screens to get them to where I want. Like I said, usually on my ultra wide, I have like a third of it on the right is the internet. So I can have like Stack Overflow or anything else I'm looking up. And then the other 2/3 are like Xcode and Xcode. That's my typical screen layout for my ultra wide. Noah Woodward, hey Noah, we're going to do coffee soon. It says, I haven't forgot about you. Just want to let you know that. It says, how established was the code base for the startup you were working on before you started working there? The current job right now is I basically got to build it from scratch. So they had a prototype. So the developers there, again, small startup, only 4 people officially, 4 or 5 people. And they had built a prototype, but they weren't iOS developers. They were like just general software engineers that can write a couple different languages, but not specializing in iOS development. So the reason they hired me is because they were looking for like an iOS developer to build their app. So when I came in, I got to basically say, okay, this was just a prototype, and there was a lot of technical debt because when you're not sure what you're doing in iOS development, you're just kind of building technical debt on top of you're not doing things the right way. So when I came in, it was with the idea of having a clean slate. Let me start from scratch, as the iOS developer, because all they had was a prototype. So basically, I got to start it from scratch. Was a long way of saying that. So that was good. What would you study for a junior iOS dev technical interview right now? Suyushi, if you check out my channel, I have a whole playlist called iOS Swift interview tips, and it's everything from memory management to, optionals, all that stuff. I have a whole video series on that, so definitely check that out. All right, looks like we're coming to the end. Maybe only a couple questions. Let me get one more good one. All right, looks like the last decent one is from Noah again. It says, how much do you rely on protocol-oriented programming with Swift? 0. That's not saying protocol-oriented programming is bad. It's just in my projects that I've built, I just haven't used it. I have heard, I know Lyft, the Lyft app. Last I interviewed there anyway, about a year ago. So it may have changed, but they were using protocol-oriented programming pretty heavily. So it's certainly out there. Many great teams are using it. I have just never used it, so I don't really have a good answer there. All right, a couple last questions. See if there's any good ones before I take off. I do have to go. I'm already running late. Okay, cool. That wraps it up this week. Again, I do these live streams every other Sunday. So not next Sunday, but the Sunday after that. And be on the lookout for Swift news tomorrow. See everyone next time.